Hello and welcome to Hospitality Hotdish, fresh from the oven. I am Kate Conroy, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships here at Hospitality Minnesota, which is a member-driven organization dedicated to educating, supporting, and advocating for Minnesota's hospitality industry. What you can expect from the Hot Dish are conversations with restaurants, hotels, resorts, campgrounds, and the allied members who support those businesses in the state. We release a new episode every other Thursday, so be on the lookout for those. Speaking of which, you can find the Hot Dish just about anywhere you can download a podcast. We even put them up on YouTube, so check us out. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review so that the algorithm gets us in front of other awesome people just like you. With me today is Bo Bigelow with the Minnesota Ski Area Association. Bo, say hi, let the audience hear your voice.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Very happy to. All right, so we're going to jump right in. Bo, what is your favorite hot dish?
Anything with seafood.
That is not what I was expecting.
Being somebody from one of the from New England, a coastal state, I just love seafood. And moving out here, just getting to experience the different kind of seafood that's out here, the freshwater seafood versus the saltwater.
That is a really good observation, but I would not necessarily put seafood into a hot dish. I've, I'm sure, I mean, other than tuna casserole, which is a thing, obviously, but it's not what you're thinking of, I don't think.
No. I mean any kind of meaty fish or can be mixed in with pasta and potato, and it's just really nice. It's a really great consistency and taste.
Now I need to go find that. I need to investigate that because that sounds really good, actually.
It is.
All right. Thank you very much for that. This is where I get all my recipes from. I swear to God.
It's great.
All right. But in terms of hospitality, what is your why?
There are a couple of them. Um, I think I think for me the biggest one is it helps develop a sense of community. And
Mhm.
um, having grown up in a kind of in a tourist area on in New York, getting to see all sorts of diversity in terms of like people I got to work with, the get people that came out to visit where we lived and kind of got to be at the tourist. It just was a really interesting way to kind of meet people and kind of we were able to show off our community and got to understand the sense of other people's community. So um, and the other big piece is it was just something my family like. We loved taking vacations together. We loved traveling together. We loved experiencing different things. So as I kind of grew up, um, getting to work in the hospitality industry just sort of became a natural fit because it was something I have a passion for. And I mean, who doesn't love to get to work in a field that they're passionate about?
Absolutely correct. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up on Eastern Long Island in New York.
Wow, way out on the tip then.
Yep, about 20 miles from Montauk, in a small little village called Sagaponack.
All right. I spent some time on the East Coast. I've heard of it. I've never been there, but I've heard of it.
It's gorgeous. And a lot of potato farms.
I don't think of Long Island and farming at all, ever. That's not
Yep.
what wow. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. I need to take a minute to process that, and I think we're going to take a break while I do that.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. Bo Bigelow with the Minnesota Ski Area Association. What's your favorite Minnesota escape?
That's a hard one. I mean, one of the things I love about my job is I've got members all across the state. So as I've gotten to travel to all the different parts of the state, visiting my members and getting to know them, it's been a great opportunity, especially for a new person to the state. I mean, my job takes me all over. But I think my favorite place I've been to, just because there's something about it, is Stillwater. I just love going down there in the summer and sitting at one of the restaurants outside along the river or
Yeah.
along the street, just people watching. It's just a really fun energy and a nice way to kind of get away from down like the Minneapolis area quickly.
Yeah.
But
I am so
so
with you.
there's so many great places in the state to visit. It's hard to really pick one.
No, you're totally right. But my parents live in Afton. And so when I was living on the East Coast, whenever I would come home for a week or a long weekend, we would always do a trip to Stillwater and just hit, the antique stores and then get lunch
Yeah.
somewhere. And it's such a beautiful, adorable little town. I love
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, can you talk a little bit about what you do for the Minnesota Ski Area Association? Probably a lot of people are like, what even is that?
That is true. I get that question a lot. Um, so we're a member-based organization, and my job and the association's job is to represent the interests of the alpine skiing industry in the state of Minnesota. So we focus on governmental affairs, working with the legislature, policymakers, the elected officials is a big part of the job. And then we also work on a lot of risk management so that both our guests and our employees are able to enjoy the sport in the safest way possible. So I do a lot of education and training with our members on best practices, helping develop safety protocols for our members. And then another big part of my job is I get to talk about skiing and tourism in Minnesota on a regular basis. And I think that's the really fun part of my job is I
Yeah.
get to talk about what I love every day. So it's a lot of advocacy work. It's a lot of reading policy, reading in both government like legislation and insurance policy. It's not
Hmm.
everyone's cup of tea, but it's something I love reading that kind of stuff and helping educate our members on what laws have changed and how they can kind of uh, manage those changes within their business. And the ski industry is kind of a challenge because our most laws in typically start on January 1st, which is in the middle of our
Hmm.
season. And it's one of our
Yeah.
busiest times of the year. So we try and kind of understand what the changes are going to need to be beforehand, earlier in the
Hmm.
kind of on our onboarding process in October, November. So sometimes we're ahead of like where state agencies might be on their marketing materials or having information available. So we end up having to create a lot of that on our own and we work in tandem with the agencies to make sure what we're doing is in line with what they're going to be recommending. But it can be a little challenging, especially this year with some of the changes coming um, that were passed by the Minnesota legislature.
Yes. I was just thinking it's no wonder that you and Jill get along so well. Shout out to Jill Sims, our
She
government
is
affairs
fantastic.
person. Yeah, here at HM. You guys have the same hobby, reading legislation.
We do.
I don't know many people who are like, yeah, I can't wait to sink my teeth into that bill.
People that work in governmental affairs do.
Yeah, I love it. But it's so cool that you get to marry the two parts of the things that you love into a job that you get to
Yeah.
like pay attention to these legislative things and keep people safe and make sure that your members are compliant always. And you're right, the Minnesota does not always give a lot of runway. Like when ESST passed late last year, the start date was January 1, and I think we had like 4, maybe 6 weeks to be compliant. If that,
In that ballpark.
it was stressful.
It was, and it was, and and no, and this isn't to anything against the agencies because the
Right,
legislation wasn't passed. They didn't have a lot of time to implement it, but
right.
there was a lot of the associations were really helping the agencies develop the guidelines because we were trying to educate our members because
Right.
we didn't want anybody come January 1 to be in violation because there were some fairly steep penalties.
Yes.
And I mean, all so many of the hospitality businesses in Minnesota, they're all small family, many of them, they're small family businesses, and everybody wants to
Yep.
do what's right by their employees. And they want
Of
happy
course.
employees because happy employees make for good guest experience and everything else that goes along with hospitality. But when we're adding this additional level of stress where there's quick turnaround time, major changes between earned sick and save time, and then starting with the new family medical leave coming next year and
Yep.
everything and some of the changes that we're facing this year with the minimum wage changes and the fee bill, it gets very challenging. And the agencies are great to work with because they do understand the challenges and sometimes legislators they see the end goal and they get what they want out of the bill, but they don't understand that that one size fits all isn't really necessarily the answer, and it's a lot more nuanced. And sometimes
Hmm.
the nuances are what can be the most challenging thing at the legislature because there's a time crunch in terms of people's availability. Plus, we have a deadline of how many of when the session has to end, so it can definitely be it can definitely be challenging.
Yeah. It's funny. We were just junk fees is the bill that you just referenced.
Yes.
And that's its nickname. Nobody here thinks that it's actually junk
No.
that is being
No.
tacked on. That's its nickname in the legislature. And the way that the bill was written, there is a lot of nuance. Like the attorney general doesn't necessarily read it the same way that the legislature does, and they don't read it the same way that we do, and we don't read it this like it's just there's a lot of room for clarity, I think.
Yes.
And
And that's not that's not great when a bill is written in such a wide reaching bill is written in a way that there's so much confusion. I
right.
mean, I've been having a lot of conversations with people at different agencies, and I was on a call, and two people at two different agencies had two completely different interpretations, and
Right.
everybody on the call was just like, huh,
Mm-hmm.
we really do. We all know what the intent of the bill was. And everybody's like, well,
Right.
this was the intent. But it's like, yeah, that's great. That's what the intent was. But this is what you actually wrote. And this is what you actually passed. So that's what we have to work off of.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's going to involve having the legislature come back in January when they come back into session and do a technical fix. But the challenge is the law goes into effect January 1st. The legislature doesn't come back until after that. So there's a
That's
window
right.
where, and there's enforcement action, and there can be, in some of the way that the enforcement action exists, it's very easy to report a business, and for a very minor omission, and
Yep.
now all of a sudden you have an enforcement action by the attorney general's office on a bill that nobody's 100% clear on what piece is supposed to be what.
Yep. 100% correct. So given all of that, my next question is really dumb. What keeps you up at night?
Well, there are a few things. Weather is definitely one that keeps me
Mm,
up at night. Obviously, we're coming off a very abnormal winter in the 2023-24 ski season, and there were a lot of hospitality businesses that were impacted by the abnormal winter. So that's one that keeps me up at night. Um, and then also knowing, kind of keeping track of what the legislature is doing, and then now that the session is over, how do I help educate my members, and how do I help advocate for my members so that they understand what they're supposed to be doing? So it's kind of, there's the two prong. It's the weather, even in the summer, like construction season. If it's
mm,
rainy all the time, that delays our construction. So weather definitely keeping me up, and then legislation and policy and regulations are the other piece. And it's all really because I just want to advocate the best I possibly can do for my members, and working with organizations like yours, Hospitality Minnesota, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, are the great organizations, and we're all doing the same thing. We're all advocating for our
yeah.
members. And what I love about this is, and I've been in this kind of industry for 20 plus years, is how in Minnesota, how many organizations are willing to work with each other. And we are able to identify issues that we all are common grounds on, and then we just full charge that issue. And we can put
Hmm.
aside things we might disagree on pretty easily and then still advocate for those independently. But when there's an issue that impacts all of us, I love how Minnesota organizations are all working together.
100% agree with you. There isn't a lot of ego that gets in the way, I have found. Now, I've only been in Minnesota the last 8 months. I grew up here, but then I spent 20 years accidentally on the East Coast. And so I've only been back a little while, but I have found what you just said to be fully true. Not a lot of egos get in the way. When things need to happen, people just roll up their sleeves and
Yep.
help.
Yep. I totally agree. I
Yeah.
moved out here in 2019, and took over this position June of 2020 during the pandemic.
Wow,
So it was a very interesting time to take over an association during the pandemic.
I can't even imagine. That's incredible. Good for you. Anything that you'd like to promote coming up?
I mean, one of the things that I get most excited by and by our organization does is we've got a program called our fourth grade passport that allows any fourth grader, any student who's a fourth grader, doesn't matter where they live, to ski or snowboard for free in the state of Minnesota. There's a small processing fee to get the pass, but then from there, the um, fourth grader gets to ski or snowboard for free at the members of the Minnesota Ski Area Association's members, and it's a great way to kind of help families get out and enjoy winter. Obviously, it's one of our longest seasons, and there's so much to do outside in the winter. And skiing and snowboarding is a great opportunity. It's a great way for families to just go out and have some fun, ski for a little bit, and then sit sit in the chalet and have a cup of hot cocoa or a cookie or a brownie.
That sounds fantastic. Oh my gosh, what a cool thing. I'm jealous of the fourth graders, and I feel bad for the third and the fifth graders because
Well, there's a lot of there are other programs as kids get a little bit older at the fifth, sixth, and
Mhm.
seventh grade that a lot of community or school groups run. So there's a lot of other ways for
Okay.
fourth grade was just it was an opportunity that we saw as a kind of lacking an opportunity. So we wanted to create that for people.
I love that. You saw a space and you were like, we should fix that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. How can people get in touch with you if they need to?
They can visit our website, which is skiandboardmn.com. From there, our phone number's on there, or they can send me an email or fill out one of our online contact forms. But the website's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. Bo
Yeah,
Bigelow with the Minnesota Ski Area Association. Thank you so much for joining me today.
yeah, it's been
And
great.
it has been. I feel like I learned a lot. And for all of you out there listening, we will see you next time. Bye.